yo, I make rugs and I'll show you how to make them.
Art is kind of like magic, where if you don't practice, you don't get anywhere. So what I want you guys to do is take in all the information that I'm giving you and practice. Most likely your first rug will not turn out the way that you want it to. Just keep practicing. To start off, we have the tufting frame, which is not just wood. It also has carpet holding strips on here as well, which go along every single side of the frame. Also, these are pretty pointy, so just be careful with that as well. In the past, other tufters such as Redback Rugs and myself have recommended gloves like these to apply the fabric onto the frame. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the frame. The frame that I have is custom made, but if you don't want to make one, you can buy one pre-made on Amazon through my description links. I have every tool down there. Clicking through those links will heavily support the channel and my creation for creating content and more rugs. But I will say, if you don't want to click through the link, you don't have to. Now that we have established that this is a custom made frame, if you want to make one yourself, you certainly can. I recommend getting thick pieces of wood, certainly like 2 inches thick, is because I started off with wood pieces that were 1 inch thick and they started to bend a little bit, and you'll see why that happens later on. Another thing I recommend having is these right here, the L brackets on your frame to make it a bit more sturdy. It is certainly a big help. Now I'm going to show you how I apply the fabric onto the frame, but first I advise you to watch carefully because there is a couple of things that you can do in order to mess this whole thing up. The fabric that I use is from Tuft Stuff. I end up buying it in bulk. It's a gray polyester type of fabric with white lines going vertical and horizontal throughout the fabric. Now, I personally like this fabric more than the previous fabric that I used to use. In the past, I used a tan or white monk's cloth, which you can get on Amazon or Joann's, Michael's, whatever place ends up selling them near you. This fabric does end up being a little bit more than what you would see on Amazon and those art stores, but I would say it's definitely worth it. Once again, it's from Tuft Stuff. I am not affiliated with them, so if you go on their website, I don't have a code or anything like that, but I still recommend them for sure. Now, I won't be putting fabric on the whole frame. I'm actually gonna use just enough for this bottom half, and that's all I'm gonna need for today. I definitely recommend having at least 2 inches of fabric on each side. Otherwise, you're gonna have a really hard time gripping the fabric, pulling it, and making sure that this frame has the right amount of tension on it. The goal is to have this as tight as possible on the frame. Here is where I recommend putting on the gloves because this is the part that's kind of tricky. I end up pressing down, making sure that all the spikes are going through the top layer of fabric. So then from there, I can actually just pull everything else. Then I end up pulling from the bottom, making sure that it's tight on here. I don't go too much. Make sure you go all the way to the edge. That's very important. Another thing that you want to pay attention to is the vertical and horizontal lines. You definitely want to straighten those out, fix them, make sure that everything is perfect. You want to stretch those sides out. Pull forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. All the way across. Another thing I recommend doing is poking in the corners because sometimes you might struggle with getting the right amount of tension within the corners. A good way to know that you're finished is actually by flicking it or tapping it. It should bounce back fairly quick. When you press in, it shouldn't go far at all. And when you flick it, it should also make a noise. So I'm done here. Everything seems good. And let's go on to the next part. Now, if you have a frame that's sectioned off and you did exactly what I did, where I only need the fabric in a certain location, I recommend cutting off the excess fabric. So that's what I'm going to do now. That way this can be used for another project. Now, the next part is fairly easy, and it only requires a projector. I'm going to show you how to set it up, but if you have any other questions, I can certainly help you out with another video that I made and posted a couple months back. It will certainly help you guys out. Now let's get started. Now we can take this out and then just take out the wires real quick. We only need an HDMI and the power cable. Everything else we don't really need. Then we take out the projector itself. Now I do already have a tripod piece right on here, which makes it super easy to just grab a tripod and stick it on there. Easy. Setting up the projector isn't that complicated. Just make sure that you have enough space in order to actually, have distance between the projector and the frame. You really want to make sure that you can see every detail in it. Now, when it comes to the projectors, it's kind of just a preference, and you don't really have to get my exact projector, though I do recommend it because it is high quality. At the same time though, some people might need a wireless projector. Maybe they want to hang it from the ceiling. This here, I'm not exactly sure if it is or not. You guys can check on Amazon or wherever you end up buying one. Now, I take the projector and set it around 4 to 5 feet away from the actual frame. Now that we have it set up and the exact height that I want it, just plug it in, turn the power on, and connect it to your computer. There we go. And let's connect the HDMI, turn it on, and it should power on soon. You'll hear it. Maybe you won't hear it, it's kind of quiet. All right, so now we have to make sure that the projector is level and not tilted. So make sure that you have it on something straight, or, like I have a tripod, which you can see the levels on it, which is really, really helpful. So we're just gonna do that, and then we're gonna zoom out. We're gonna make sure that it all fits onto the frame here. On my projector, I have two options, which is focus and tilting. My projector does not automatically focus, so once again, if you're looking for a specific type of projector, get a different one. But mine, once again, I really enjoy it. I use it all the time, and I've only ever used it. Now I have my image projected onto the frame. There is a couple more steps that you need to follow. One, make sure that everything is in focus, and here, as you can see, everything is focused. Second step is actually very, very, very important, and it's actually flipping the image, which we haven't done yet, so I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. Now, I have a MacBook, so I only use the app called Preview, which is literally the first thing that opens when you try to open a photo. I end up going to the top left of the screen, and then I go to Tools and Flip Horizontal. And from there, if you can look behind me, now you can see that the image is completely flipped around. Now, if you're using any other apps to view the image, I'm pretty sure almost every single app has a way to flip horizontal. And that's exactly what you want to do and find. Now, if you can't find it, I'm sure Google can help you out as well. And for anyone else who wants to see this process in more detail, I have a video, and that will be right over here. Now, even though I have the design set up, that doesn't mean that I can get straight into tufting. I also have to make sure that it's the right size for my customer. My customer said any size works, so I'm probably gonna go for a 2 foot or maybe a 2.5 by 2.5. I can't really go any bigger than that because this is the size of the frame that I'm working with. Now, my customer wanted a square
rather than it just being cut out or in a circle or a rectangle. I'm going to make this square 2 foot by 2 foot. What I'm not going to do is count the design as 2 foot by 2 foot. Also, another tip, make sure that you have multiple Sharpies because you never know when they're going to run out. Now this design here is around 14 inches. I'm going to start at 7 inches in order to create the box and make sure that it's the exact size that I want it to be. Now I have 2 little dots marking the 2 foot line that I want to create. And then I'm going to do that for the horizontal line as well. And now I have these 2 lines right here to create that imaginary box. Now we're going to start tracing the design. And now it's done. It is completed. I just didn't draw in the square, but the only thing that I need to do now is labeling the colors, which I definitely recommend you guys to do if you don't know where the colors are going. Now this is pretty simple because it's just rainbow colors with a little bit of a gradient.
All right, so it is day 2, and after talking to the customer one more time and sending him pictures of what it looks like, we're going to switch a couple of things up, and that will start with removing the word Atari. And instead of having a 2x2 square, we're gonna have a 1.3 by 2. And then for the final change, we are going to change the color palette from the original colors to this. I know that I have everything drawn on and labeled, but that is a very easy fix, and I'm glad that we spoke about it. So I'm gonna fix that real quick, and then we're gonna move on to yarn and colors.
Now to change the proper dimensions, we have to figure out the height of the actual design left. So like I said before, we're taking out the word Atari and we're just figuring out how tall the actual design is going to be. So this is 10 inches here. So that means that we have 5 more inches to make it 1.3 feet. Since we have 5 inches left of the design, I can do 2.5 inches above and below this here. So I'm just going to do that now. I'm just going to mark it up here. All right, so I made the line. It looks a little botched right now, but don't worry about that. This is just an outline, and I'll make sure that everything's straight and even. Also, I don't have to change these dimensions because I already have the 2 black dots separating evenly for 2 feet. Now that we're done with this, we can start talking about yarn. Obviously, there's different colors and shades to yarn, but that's not it. There's also different textures and fabric to yarn, but I'm not a professional with the other yarns, so I'm gonna tell you exactly what I use and why I like it. Red Heart yarn is a big staple in all of my art projects. Every single piece has been made from Red Heart yarn, and that is a acrylic based yarn. Now for the texture, it is pretty fluffy and a nice quality. Though many might say that wool is softer, I think acrylic is pretty soft. I really do like this yarn, and you might be asking, where do I get it? One being Michael's and the other being Joann's. Now, personally, I really do like Joann's. Please? But on a serious note, I really do enjoy going to Joann's much more because they have a wider selection, and not only that, but they have better coupons and mostly better prices. And if you don't have those stores nearby, you can also just order it from Amazon, and I have that link in the description. Now when it comes to the colors, Red Heart yarn has a pretty big category of all the colors they have. There's many different shades, which once again, Joann's has it in store, which is fantastic. That's what a tufter's dream is. Now, how much does this actually cost? Now, yarn normally costs anywhere from $3 around $8. And I normally double that price because I have to use 2 strands for each color, which I recommend. But that's another reason why Coupons are a great thing. For my projects, if I don't have the colors already, I just go to the store and grab tons of yarn and buy it in bulk. That will make things much easier, and for the upcoming projects, you might not even have to go out. Now this is the cheaper one, and it's not much smaller, but you can see the difference. Now let me tell you, whether it's a hobby or a business to you, you'll have a lot of yarn. Now for a beginner, tufting guns might sound a little complicated to you, but I'm gonna make it really easy for you. Now this tool here is called the AK1 cut pile or loop pile. Now cut pile is when it cuts the yarn coming out of the gun, and loop pile is when it just loops it through the fabric. Now if you guys use a loop pile gun, you can use some of these tips within the video to really help you, but I will not be talking about a loop pile gun because I specifically use this as a cut pile. Now as I was talking about earlier, cut pile is when it pushes the yarn through the fabric and then cuts it. Now if you guys can see right here, this is the mechanism of how it does it. It pushes it through and then it cuts. Now another thing that you need to worry about when using the gun is actually cleaning it and maintaining it. It's very important to do that, otherwise it will damage the durability of the gun. It will come with a brush here. Now mine is a little dirty, but brush it off after being used. Now, there's another part after this where if you see black gunk on the gun, because, well, there's gonna be yarn particles, a little bit of dust, and of course, the oil, the lubricant on the gun. So that will create a black gunk, which you just want to quickly wipe off. You can use a fiber cloth towel and that should work. Now, the gun should come with a little bit of lubricant, and that is what you apply on it. Now, you don't have to be super generous with the amount that you put on there. What I do is put it in 4 locations, which is right here, right here, right here, and on the other side over here. From there, you want to take this wheel and move it around just a little bit. Now that it's clean and lubricated, I want to talk about the speed adjustment knob right here. Now this knob right here controls the speed of the gun, and you'll see a little white line. That's where you want to aim the knob. Now I keep it close to the lowest setting. The reason being is because when the gun is slower, you can get more detail in there, easier circles or curves, whatever. But not only that, but it gets in between every section of the fabric. When your gun is much faster, it might be skipping parts on your fabric, which means you are going to have a less dense rug. Rather than yarn being right here, right here, right here, it will be right here, right here, right here. And when it skips, it makes these lines in your rug which just look really weird after you shave it. On top of that, if you're using the color white and it's not dense enough, it will be the background color of whatever fabric that you're actually using. So in my case, it might be gray. I don't want that, and I'm sure you don't either. Now, of course, you can up the speed to whatever you want. I mean, it really is preference. But for someone who's been tufting for more than a year, I keep it rather close to the slowest setting. Real quick, I'm gonna show you a representation of why this thing is an industrial tool and why you should be careful with it, especially when changing the speed. I'm gonna let it go, and I'll just show you what it's like. This is on the lowest setting, and I'll go to the fastest. Dangerous. Now to finish off talking about the functionality of the gun, the way that you know that your gun is near the end of its lifespan is when it's screaming. That sounds really weird, but I actually mean that. It'll make a really high-pitched sound like ee weeks before it's about to die. So if you have a tufting gun already and it sounds like that, it might be time to get a new one. Now let's talk about setting up the tufting gun. When it comes to yarn, there's 3 different ways you can use it. When you purchase yarn, there will be 1 strand on the outside that kind of coils around the yarn. Now you can use this piece of yarn when inserting it into the gun, but there is one thing that I don't like about it. What ends up happening is it gets knotted. Somewhere along the line when tufting, it gets coiled around itself and it knots, and it's a terrible, terrible feeling. Now what people do to prevent this from happening is taking the yarn and spinning it on a wheel, and that is called a yarn winder. Now personally, I don't use one, but they are effective, but they do take some time. Unless you have an electric yarn winder, which obviously would be way faster and more efficient. Now neither of those 2 methods I use. I actually just take the inside strand, which normally you will find on one of the ends here, which in my case, it is this right here. When I end up using it from the inside strand, I never have any issues, so that is the method I personally use. Now, of course, you can also switch it up, use what you want to, and find what's best for you. Now, you can see this little hole right at the top near the tip. That is where you are going to insert the yarn threader and your yarn. Make sure before you start this process, turn the gun off. What you want to do is take this and push it through the hole. Now, once it's pushed through on this end, you want to push it through this other hole right here, and there you go. Now it is exactly where you need it. Now, for tufting, you can either use 1 strand or 2 strands. Some people use all the way up to 5 strands. Personally, for this video, I'm going to show you what I do with 2 strands. So that is going to require 2 separate pieces. Now, normally I take these 2 pieces of yarn and put them in a secure corner where they're not going to really move around. You don't want that. You can either put them in like a box or something, or you can just lay them up next to something and kind of squish them in. I've seen people like S-Class Supply put them in a art box, and that works for him. For me, I just kind of put it into a little space and it should be fine. All right, so before actually putting the yarn into the gun, there might be a little part on your frame that you should hang the yarn onto, and that is fairly important. That's another step that prevents the yarn from just knotting up. Now I get it lined up perfectly so the 2 strands are completely even, and then I just loop it into the hook, like so. And now you're good. Just start pulling it through. Now I take the yarn from the inside strand, and then I push it through here, and then pull it just a little bit, make sure that it's kind of tight. And then from here, you can just pull it through. Now, I don't know if I can really get this on camera that well, but there you go. Now, you don't want to keep it this long. You can just kind of pull it the other way. Just detach this right here by pulling up and pulling away, and then pull this yarn a little back. I would say to about here. That's all you really need to stay on this end. And by the way, guys, on your frame, any loop will really work. You don't necessarily have to use the same one as me. Now that your gun is all set up, you want to turn on the gun by clicking this button right here, up, and it should have a red light on the back. I'm going to show you guys a technique on how to actually tuft rather than just going straight into it and finding out these mistakes later. When you're tufting, you want the gun to glide. You don't want to be pushing your gun up or any type of way. This black handle will help you. It's used for balancing the gun. Any way you want to balance the gun is fine as long as it's good to you. Now, of course, swiveling and turning your gun will be this back end here rather than this portion. So keep that as a reminder. I'm going to tuft a couple of lines, and I'm going to show you exactly what not to do and what to do. First, I'm going to push the gun up and show you why you don't do that, and then I'll show you what the line should look like. And now this is what it should look like. Here's what it shouldn't look like, because all the yarn is spreading through the fabric and skipping pieces. And this is what it should look like, whereas it's completely driven into the fabric and it didn't skip anything. Now you can see a clear difference between how dense one is versus the other. All right, so there was one final change. It's fairly simple. You guys will see what it looks like while I'm doing it.
Going too fast, you might miss something, so going in little spurts is a great way to put some detail into your work.
All right, now the rug is done and you can see exactly what it looks like. I think it looks pretty dang good compared to the picture. Now, the next thing that you need to do is glue the rug. Now, I personally like to use this brand right here, which is Roberts 3000 glue. I got mine at Lowe's or Home Depot, I can't remember. This carpet glue is insanely good, and on top of that, it is tacky after drying, which means you can fold in the edges and have them stay there like an adhesive without having to apply another glue again. Though when it comes to all of these carpet glues that every tufter will recommend you, there are two things that you will need. One being a scraper, or you can use your hand with a glove on it, and the other being ventilation. That's why I always like to open a window and wear a mask. I'm gonna open this up and then I'm gonna show you what's inside and how much you really need to use. So you can take your spatula here and just kind of whirl it around, make sure that it's not clunky. There shouldn't be any chunks in it or anything like that. Sometimes yarn gets trapped in here, but it's very soft. It's kind of like icing on a cake. Now, to be safe, I normally just dunk it in and then pull it out, and that should be enough. Now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to lightly apply it here, and I'm going to wipe both sides, and I'm just going to spread it evenly all the way up and down. You'll see that the glue gets in between the layers of the yarn. Make sure that happens. Don't let it glob up. Now, after getting it everywhere, wait 12 to 48 hours for it to dry. It's the next day. As you can tell, there's a little bit of tack left to this, but it is dry for the most part. What you want to do is cut this out all the way around. I would leave around an inch of fabric all the way around the rug, so that's what I'm going to do now. Now you want to lay it on the floor. Make sure that you push it down a little bit and it's not curling over itself. Now for a square or a rectangle, I cut the corners into a little square itself. Now if you can hear this, you can tell that it's still tacky, which is really good, because now what you want to do is you want to fold in these edges and it should stick right to it. I don't go crazy with it. I just pull the inch that I left and just pull slightly forward, so there's a little bit of a curl. Not a crazy curl, just a little bit. Just like the other side, I fold in this side as well. All the excess fabric that I left on here. And then I just push it in for good measure. Once all four edges are folded in, you're gonna go to the second to last step, which are the two other glues that you need to apply to this. I like to use the spray adhesive glue and hot glue as well. Some people decide to just stick the backing fabric on while it's drying, which then they can just cut the rug out. I worry about the quality of the rug and whether the backing is going to peel off easily, and frankly I feel like it's going to be way too easy to do that. So for my process, get the hot glue ready and the spray adhesive ready to go. These are the two things that you will see me use within this process: a hot glue with Gorilla Glue sticks and Super 77 3M spray adhesive. Ooh, I also forgot that I use this backing fabric, which is non-slip. I use this and I buy it on Amazon. Once again, everything that I have and use in this video will be put in my description so you guys can get it. Once again, I am affiliated and stuff, so it will help my channel out. But once again, I use a little extra fabric. Now, if you're really stingy on fabric, maybe you should try and cut it to size beforehand. I like to have it an inch off on each side, because you're gonna have to cut away at everything once it's hot glued around the entire edge. So that creates kind of like this perfect edge, rather than cutting it to size and then hoping that
when you hot glue it, it looks right. Take your backing fabric, put it on top of your rug, and then slowly apply hot glue over one side. Apply the hot glue very slow and carefully. And another way to prevent the hot glue from actually getting onto your yarn is applying it slow and then pushing it back closer to the center of the rug. Once that's done, grab a mask just like before and put it on. Now it's time to use the spray glue, so make sure you pop the cap off and shake it well. I carefully line it up to the edges, not too close to the yarn though. I take the back and push it on top of the glue, making sure that it binds to the back of the rug. Apply some pressure for a couple of seconds and then it should be all set. All right, so it is all set. Now I peel this back just a little bit. All the corners that I didn't apply the hot glue to, I peel them back, and now we apply the rest of the hot glue. A rug this size might require around 3 to 4 hot glue sticks. Now that it's done and dried, I cut out the edges. Best technique I've found out so far is making a little cut where there's a corner on the rug. Pull back just a little bit and cut. So this is what the rug looks like on the back all the way. And this is what the front looks like right now. We have to detail it and shave it. You guys will be able to tell a major difference. So look at it right now and then we'll shave it and you guys tell me how much of a difference there really is. Using these little shavers, they get a lot of detail in, and people tend to detail with these as well. I personally don't, but shaving down the rug, you can use these with this guide. Now it does not come with the guide, but you can buy it on Amazon as well with this. It is a fantastic guide and a fantastic way to shave your smaller rugs. And if you're doing a larger rug, then I recommend getting the beach rows, which are a fantastic way to shave down a big rug. With any shaver, I use a guide on it just to make sure, because I have ruined 2 rugs because I didn't have a guide on. Now this guide I built myself with plexiglass, a couple of nuts and bolts, and wood. And you might even be able to buy a guide on Amazon. I'm not entirely sure, but if I find one, I'll link it in the description for you guys as well. Anyway, for this rug, I am going to use these small shavers. Safety first, guys. Now there's not some crazy technique to using this. All you do is turn it on and hold it like this and push it up all the way around the rug. I tend to start from the middle and push my way out on each end, but some people do it differently, so it's all up to you. Now once you vacuumed and everything is clean, this is when I come in with the duckbill scissors and detail everything. You can also detail with this shaver here as well, obviously take it off the guide, but you can do that. I choose to do it with scissors because I get more detail out of it. What I do is choose a color, so I'm going to choose white, and I'm going to push the yarn going this way, and then we will just push the scissors in and start cutting away at it. And there you go. Also, another thing I forgot to mention, if I push all the yarn this way, of course it's going to look better, but once you do this, you can tell that you need to cut it. So this is when you push the red yarn to the left-hand side, overlapping the white, and then I cut around. So after you're detailing, I end up just cleaning it up a little bit, making sure that
it's fairly even all the way across. The final thing to do is take your label and put it on the back. So let me just peel this here. And it's a 1 of 1. And that's how you make your own custom rugs, and you can do it at home. Now, if you want some tips on how to into a business, here are some tips right here. And if you are looking to price your rug, this video might be for you. Thank you guys for watching so much, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.